There is one truth a narcissist will never say out loud to you. It is a single fact they spend their entire life hiding behind charm, behind sudden explosions of rage, behind long stretches of cold silence, or behind tears that always seem to show up exactly when the timing benefits them most. Here it is. The narcissist is not actually afraid of your anger. They are not shaken by your tears. They are not intimidated by your warnings or your threats to walk away for good. None of that scares them because they have already survived all of it 100 times before with people who came before you or with you yourself in an earlier round of the same cycle. So what is it that genuinely terrifies them? What is the one thing that shakes the dark, unstable foundation sitting underneath their entire personality? It is the exact moment you stop reacting to them. It is the moment you finally look at them clearly, without the fog of confusion clouding your vision. It is the moment your eyes stop scanning their face for approval and simply start observing their behavior for what it actually is. Because in that instant, a mechanism they have depended on for years quietly starts to fail. The illusion they built around you begins to collapse. And the entire pattern of manipulation, control, and quiet domination that has been feeding on your emotional energy suddenly realizes it is looking at someone who can no longer be used as supply. That is the exact moment the narcissist starts behaving in strange, erratic, unmistakable ways. Once you learn to spot these patterns, you will understand something most people never grasp in their entire life. The narcissist was never the one holding the power. You were. They just worked very hard to make sure you never found that out. Before we go further, do something for yourself right now. If you have ever been manipulated, gaslit, or drained by someone who claimed to love you, follow this channel. Not for me, for you. Because what comes next may permanently change how you see every narcissist you have ever known. Most people never realize that narcissists are not driven by love, logic, or even real hatred. They run entirely on control. Control is their oxygen. It is the only thing that keeps the hollow emptiness inside them quiet for a while. And the way they secure that control is by studying you closely. They observe your insecurities, your hopes, your old wounds, your loneliness, your basic human need to be understood. Once they have mapped that out, they position themselves as the exact answer to everything you have ever felt was missing. That is why the beginning always feels so magical. It was never real love. It was reconnaissance. They were mapping the terrain of your soul so they could use it against you later to keep their leverage intact. The moment you start healing, the moment you start finding yourself again outside of them, that map becomes useless. Their grip starts loosening. And that is precisely when their behavior begins to shift in ways that feel unsettling to watch from the outside. Pay close attention here because this changes everything. When a narcissist senses their control over your emotions slipping, they do not respond with reflection or self-awareness. They respond with panic disguised as dominance. They might turn ice cold overnight or suddenly become smothering and sweet without warning. They might vanish without a word of explanation or flood you with more attention than you ever asked for. They start fights over nothing. They dig up old wounds just to watch you flinch. They accuse you of things you never did. They try to rewrite history right in front of you, expecting you to doubt your own memory and fold back into the small shape they once carved out for you. And when you refuse to fold, when your eyes stay calm and steady, something inside them starts to unravel because their entire identity depends on your reaction. Without your emotional response feeding them, they stop functioning the way they need to. Here is the part almost nobody talks about. The narcissist is not a strong person pretending to be weak. The truth runs the opposite direction. The narcissist is a deeply frightened person pretending to be untouchable. Underneath the arrogance, the calculated cruelty, and the cold distance sits a wounded, frightened version of themselves that never learned how to feel safe in their own skin. That is why they need to dominate. That is why they need to humiliate. That is why they demand constant admiration and obedience and cannot tolerate being questioned. And when someone who has done the hard work of healing walks into their life and refuses to bow, the narcissist feels something close to existential horror. Because for the first time, they are forced to face the emptiness they have spent a lifetime running from. 1. The sudden irrational explosion of rage. This is not anger that follows any logical thread. It erupts out of nowhere, wildly out of proportion to whatever supposedly caused it. A tone of voice they did not like, a delayed reply, a boundary stated gently, a joke you did not laugh at. That rage was never really about what you did. It was about what you failed to give them. You failed to give them fear. You failed to give them submission. You failed to hand over the emotional supply they had grown used to pulling from you. So they escalate. Because in their narrow, distorted world, if charm no longer works, intimidation must be the next step. And if intimidation fails too, total disruption becomes the answer. 2. The sudden, deliberate withdrawal. This shows up as the silent treatment, the cold shoulder, the disappearing act, or that flat, unnerving stare across the room. To an outsider, it might look like indifference. It is the opposite of calm. They are punishing you for your independence. They are trying to make you feel invisible and desperate for their return. They are testing whether that old wound, the one that whispers you are not chosen, not enough, not loved, is still strong enough to pull you back on your knees. If you stay grounded, if you do not chase them, if you refuse to be the one who breaks the silence first, you have just done something a narcissist cannot tolerate. You have proven their absence cannot destroy you, and that is a wound to their ego they will carry a long time. 3. The theatrical blame shift. Suddenly, every problem in the relationship becomes your fault. Every cruel word only happened because you provoked it. Every lie was your fault for not trusting them enough. Every betrayal happened because you did not love them the right way. This is not an argument between two people. This is a calculated operation. The narcissist is trying to reinstall the old software of guilt and self-doubt back into your mind, because without that software quietly running in the background, you become unreachable. You become free. And freedom in someone they once controlled is the one thing they cannot allow to exist in peace. 4. The smear campaign. When internal manipulation stops working, the narcissist turns outward. They start talking about you to friends, family, coworkers, sometimes even your own children. They paint you as unstable, cold, selfish, ungrateful. They tell the story so convincingly that people who have known you for years start looking at you with doubt. What almost nobody realizes is that the smear campaign is not really an attack on your reputation. It is a desperate attempt to rebuild the cage you escaped from. Because if they can convince the world you are the problem, maybe they can convince you too. It is the last dying roar of a predator that has finally lost its prey for good. 5. The sudden reappearance of old wounds. Out of nowhere, they bring up something from years ago, a mistake you already apologized for, a moment of weakness you thought was long buried. This is not random nostalgia. It is a calculated attempt to reopen old shame. Because shame is one of the fastest ways to pull you back into a defensive, apologetic posture. If they can get you explaining yourself again, they have regained a small piece of the control they felt slipping away. Watch for this pattern closely. A person who genuinely wants resolution brings up the past to heal it together. A narcissist brings it up to destabilize you. 6. The sudden flood of generosity. Out of nowhere, gifts appear, compliments multiply. They start showing up early, remembering small details, doing things they never bothered to do before. It looks like growth. It looks like the version of them you always hoped was buried underneath the chaos. But watch the timing closely. This wave of generosity almost always arrives right after you have pulled away, right after a boundary, right after a moment where you stop chasing them. This is not remorse. It is bait. It is an attempt to reopen a door you are finally closing, dressed up as tenderness, so it slips past your guard before you notice what is happening. A person who is genuinely changed shows it through consistency over months, not through a sudden burst of charm the moment they sense you slipping away. 7. The performance of self-improvement aimed entirely at an audience. Suddenly, they are in therapy, reading books on emotional intelligence, posting quotes about growth and healing, telling mutual friends how much work they are doing on themselves. On the surface, this looks like exactly what you spent years hoping for. But notice who the performance is for. Real growth happens quietly, in private, without needing anyone to witness it or be impressed by it. A narcissist version of growth is almost always public, almost always timed to reach your ears, almost always designed to make you look unreasonable for still keeping your distance. If the growth were real, it would not need an audience. It would not need to reach you through a mutual friend at exactly the right moment. 8. Triangulation through someone new. They start mentioning a new person, a coworker, an old friend, someone from their past who suddenly reappears in every conversation. They talk about how easy this new person is, how understanding, how drama-free, always managing to say it just loud enough for you to hear. This is not really about the new person at all. It is an attempt to trigger old fears of replacement and inadequacy, hoping those fears will do the work that direct manipulation no longer can. A person secure in themselves does not need to dangle someone else in front of you to get a reaction. Notice the timing here too. This tactic almost always surfaces right after you have started to detach, never during a moment when things were calm. Watch these 8 patterns as a full picture, not as isolated incidents. Narcissists rarely use only one tactic at a time. You might see the rage and the withdrawal in the same week, the generosity and the triangulation in the same month. The tactics rotate, depending on what worked on you in the past and what they sense might still work now. This is why explaining yourself to them rarely helps and often makes things worse. Every explanation you offer becomes new information for them to study, a fresh insecurity to press on later. Silence, calm, and consistency are not coldness. They are simply the removal of raw material they use to build their next move. If any of this is landing somewhere real inside you, follow this channel right now, because what comes next is going to help you take back everything that was taken from you. Drop one word in the comments below, just one word: awake. Now here is the part that changes everything. Most people never understand that emotional independence is the single most threatening force in a narcissist world. It is not your money. It is not your status. It is not even the threat of you leaving. It is the moment you stop needing their approval, their validation, their permission to feel okay about yourself. That is the moment you cut the cord they were feeding through. And a narcissist without a steady feeding source becomes deeply unstable. That is exactly why they get more aggressive, not less, the further along you get in your healing. That aggression is not strength, it is desperation. They are searching for any new way to plug back into your life because the old ways have stopped working. Think of them as a house of cards, years of careful construction held together entirely by your emotions, your reactions, your validation. The moment you stop supplying the glue, the structure starts to wobble. They feel the ground shift beneath them. They look at you and realize you are no longer someone they can steer. That is why they become erratic. That is why they lash out, searching for any reaction at all, because even a small one hands them the energy they need to stay upright. This is why staying calm, staying neutral, staying quiet is your most powerful tool. When you hold your composure and refuse to be pulled into the chaos, you become a mirror reflecting their own emptiness right back at them. And nothing frightens them more than that. As you keep healing, remember that in their mind, your healing is their starvation. Your peace is their famine. Your self-respect is their exile. They do not want you well. They want you dependent, reactive, easy to steer. The healthier you get, the more dangerous you become to the version of you they built inside their own head to control. Here is something worth sitting with. Boundaries were never meant to be walls that shut people out. Boundaries are mirrors that show people exactly how they need to treat you if they want to stay in your life. Holding a boundary is not cruelty. It is clarity about your worth. A narcissist hates this. because for the first time, they cannot find a way around your resolve, and they cannot convince you their behavior was somehow your fault. When you stay steady and refuse to engage with the chaos they are trying to create, you are closing the door on their influence without saying a single word. You are telling them, silently but completely, that you are the one in charge of your own emotional state now. They might escalate, they might threaten, they might play the victim one final time to win your sympathy. If you hold firm, you will finally see them clearly. A person terrified of their own shadow. Someone who needs others to feel small so they can feel large. That realization is not meant to make you pity them. It is meant to show you that none of what you went through was something you had to earn or deserve. You were always worthy of a love that did not come with strings attached. As emotional independence takes root, their influence naturally fades. They will move on to someone new because they can no longer get what they need from you. You become the one who got away. They will tell themselves a story where it was all your fault, and that story is theirs to keep. You carry the truth instead. And the truth is a far sturdier foundation to build a life on. You are not who they spent years convincing you that you were. You are who you are becoming right now. Someone awake, someone grounded, someone who finally knows their own value. This work is not easy, but it is necessary. Every time you hold your ground, every time you walk away from a fight they tried to start, every time you choose your own peace over their chaos, you are reclaiming a piece of yourself. That is a victory nobody can take from you. Stay awake to these patterns. Keep your boundaries in place. Keep choosing your own well-being above their approval. The narcissist survives on your fear, but you no longer belong to their world. You have stepped into your own truth, and there is no walking back into the version of life they built for you. A narcissist cannot stand the existence of mirrors. Every time you set a boundary, no matter how gently you phrase it, you force them to see themselves with total clarity. You force them to face the fact that you have a self, a center, a soul that was never theirs to control. The only way they know how to manage that dread is to hand it to someone else to carry. For a long time, that person was you. The reason your healing terrifies them so deeply is that the moment you put that fear down, they have no one left to carry it but themselves. They would rather lose you completely than sit alone with that feeling, even for a moment. And that, more than anything else, tells you the entire truth of what you were dealing with all along. One last thing worth saying clearly. None of this means you have to hate them, confront them, or prove anything to them at all. Healing was never about winning an argument they refused to have honestly. It was never about making them admit what they did or forcing them to apologize in the way you deserved. Most of the time, that apology never comes, and waiting for it only keeps you tethered to a version of the story where they still hold the pen.